Hey there, Patreon supporters. Back with another edition of Scott's Shelves. This is where I look at a game from my collection and share it with you and tell you what I like about it. And this is Barbarian Prince. It's a solo game from 1981, one of the first solo games, and a real early fantasy game. And this one is pretty interesting. It is a kind of a choose your own adventure type game that takes place on this pretty nice map with a whole bunch of different terrain. I've had this thing forever, since 1981. It has a lot of kind of charm to it, like a lot of the games from the early days have. And it comes with this little Barbarian Prince miniature that I never got around to painting for some reason, which is odd because I used to paint all my miniatures back in the day. But he's pretty crude looking. But the way that it works is you are a barbarian prince who has been exiled from his kingdom, and so you are on your way back trying to raise money and to get an army. And you track this. There's a track here, a time track that I'm using these cubes that don't come with the game. You could use a coin or whatever. And you track the day and the week and your food supply. I think you start like at around 10 or 20. And then you have an endurance, which is your health. And so as you go, as you move on to each space, you then reference it on a travel chart here, a pretty dense chart. You kind of look at the reference number has to do with the kind of location you're in, and then there's different events that they correspond to, and then you go to this events booklet, and the events booklet is where all the adventure stuff is. So there's kind of basic encounters. So here you encounter a dwarf, and different things can happen depending on how you interact with them. It's a little bit like if you know the game Tales of the Arabian Nights. It's got a bit of that vibe, but a little more story-based, a little less random than Tales of the Arabian Nights are. But there's characters that you can recruit. You could have a priest come and join your party. Then there are monsters, of course, golem and spells, and let's see what else do we have here. We find places, small altars, high altar, treasure chests. You can get treasures out of them. Goblin Keep. There's a campsite. There's all types of adventures. There's a lot of them. I've played this for years, and you never get the same experience twice. It's actually very cool. A lot like a legacy style game, I guess. So yeah, lots of cool things that you can encounter. And then of course in the back there's a list of kind of like magic weapons. You can get like a magic sword or magic sword, anti-poison amulet, Pegasus mount so you can travel faster and over things, resistance ring, all types of neat stuff. This is really fun because of kind of its historical value. This, the fact that this is a real early game in the history of role-playing games. This is one of the early attempts to create a Dungeons and Dragons type experience, but without a dungeon master. And then here's my dice. You roll a lot of dice. My dice are getting very yellow, actually. They're pretty old. 81. Yeah, this is pretty cool. You can get it for free online. It's made by a company called Dwarf Star Games. But you can, if you go onto Board Game Geek, there's links, and people have made updated versions of the map, and there's even a few modern versions of it. There's one, I forget the name of it now, but it's like Barbarian Vince or something like that. It's kind of a comedy version of Barbarian Prince. So yeah, it's really great. We're all kind of stuck inside, and we don't have very many people to play with, so I highly recommend checking out Barbarian Prince, one of the earliest solo games from Dwarf Star Games from 1981. Part of my collection. See you later, Barbarian Prince.